it's Ms.Boley here. This week we're going to continue what we learned about last week with different kinds of shapes. And we're going to use some of our art supplies to just try out some different things and experiment kind of with our own direction. So here are some of the I can statements that we're trying to be able to do by the end of this lesson. So we want to be able to create different kinds of shapes, including geometric and organic, like we learned about last week. We want to practice creating some texture using our different materials. And we want to experiment with new materials and use them in ways that we might not have tried out before. So I've gone and I've collected some materials that I'm going to use for this assignment. I've got some colored paper, I've got some markers, I've got my paint, my watercolor paint set, and a brush. And if I'm using watercolor, I also need water, a cup of water. And I've grabbed some crayons and some pastels as well. Oh, I forgot to mention, for my watercolor paints, I'm going to use this plastic lid. It's just from my takeout containers, like it's just from my recycling bin, but I'm going to use that plastic lid to mix my paints up. So if you find a palette or anything flat and plastic that you can use to mix your paints, that would be excellent. So what I'll do is I'm just gonna play and have fun and experiment. So I don't have any plan in mind, but all I'm trying to do is just first of all to try to use my materials in different ways than what I'm used to. So in this case, I'm using the side of my pastel instead of using the tip of it to color. And also I'm trying to create some texture on these sheets of paper over the whole sheet of paper. Because later what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be cutting them into shapes that I can then use to create a picture with. So I would like you to go and just try out all the different materials that you've collected and try to use them in different ways than you're used to, and try to kind of fill in these sheets that you have with some textures. And I'm not gonna do all of them. Just kind of work until you're kind of like, okay, I feel like I'm kind of done with this. So right now what I'm doing is I'm doing watercolors. So what I've started out with was I made a little puddle of water on my palette, and then I dipped my brush into my paint and I'm mixing up what's known as a wash with my palette. It's nice to do watercolors like this because it lets me mix the water in with my paint, which makes my paint go farther on my paper. You know when you're painting and you feel like your brush keeps running out of paint? That won't happen as much if you mix a wash with water on your palette before you start. So just try out different things, experiment. This is all about you learning through doing. And you'll see sort of what I'm doing, and that might give you some ideas for some things you can try as well. Don't forget, you don't need to be, like if you're choosing to use crayons or pastels or something on one of your sheets, you're allowed to mix the materials together. So in this case, I was doing markers, and I thought, what would happen if I put watercolor paint on top of these markers? The result was kind of different from what I expected, but I tried it out, and I'm glad I tried it out. So this is the name of the game here, is all about experimentation and trying things without me telling you exactly what to do. You get to choose and you get to try. All right, so if you don't have any colored sheets of paper, it's no problem. You can still do this with white sheets of paper. So I'm just gonna do a few of sheets of white paper just so you guys can see what it looks like. And in this sheet, I'm doing a wax resist technique. So what I've done was I've used a pastel. You can use a crayon as well to color an area of my page. And then when I paint over that area with my watercolor, the watercolor will not stick to the area that has the wax or the pastel on it. So you can try out doing wax resists, see what happens, see if it works. All right, so after I'm done with trying some experimentation on a few different sheets, I'm just going to let them dry. And I'm gonna need to grab some scissors for step 2 when these are all dry and ready to go. All right, so I've let these guys dry, the ones that I had done painting on. And now I'm gonna get my scissors and I'm not gonna draw any shapes with pencil or prepare anything. I'm just gonna go ahead and start cutting my paper into different shapes. You do not have to cut all of these papers up. I just want to have like a little collection of shapes that you guys can use to create images with, whether that means we're using them as a collage where we're gluing them onto another piece of paper, or maybe we're just gonna arrange them like we did with our found object portraits, where we're just going to place them in a certain way and then not glue them down. So I'm trying to do a mixture of both geometric and organic shapes. I'm doing all closed shapes as well. I can't really do any open shapes. Really, well, I guess I could. Maybe later you'll see I'll try to do a spiral shape. But yeah, I'm trying to take what I learned from last lesson with the different types of shapes as well. And I'm also practicing my motor skills with cutting. Cutting can be difficult, especially when you're not following a line that's already drawn. So this is just for us to practice those skills of cutting and of creating shapes. One thing you can also try if you'd like is instead of using scissors, you can tear your paper into different shapes if you'd like. I found that when I was trying to tear my paper that it was hard to tear it into any shapes besides like ones that are geometric, like with straight lines. But I would encourage you to experiment with tearing your paper as well as cutting it. So, ooh, this shape is kind of an interesting shape here. It's a really squiggly one. All right, so now as promised, I'm gonna try the open shape of the spiral here. Let's see how this one turns out. All right, so now I've got a huge collection of shapes. I don't know if I'm gonna keep all of them, but I'm gonna use some of them right now just to show you kind of what I'm hoping we can do with these in the future and this week if you like. So I've grabbed a sheet of black paper and I'm gonna use my shapes to create a composition, just a picture of really anything that I want, anything that I feel like doing. So I've got my sheet of paper here and I've got my shapes down below. And I'm just gonna select some shapes and create an image of really anything that I want. interestingly, there was an artist named Henry Matisse who, when he was older and wasn't able to paint anymore, he started to do what he called painting with scissors, where he would do collages like this. Here's an image of one of his paintings with scissors. So all of those shapes are all cut out from paper. This is called the parakeet and the mermaid. A parakeet is a kind of bird. Can you spot the parakeet and the mermaid? Pause the video here and see if you can. So I'm making a landscape type image here. We've got my big sun in the corner and my land at the bottom. I'm doing kind of whatever I want, but I'm hoping that for future weeks I can give you a word or something to create using these shapes. So please don't throw them out. Keep them and save them for future assignments. So there, I've got a house. That was a perfect shape there for a little house. Okay, so once you're done, if you like, you can take a photo and attach it to this assignment. And then, like I said, I'd like you to save your shapes. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna collect them all together. You may not want to keep all of them, but I'm just gonna collect all the ones I do want to keep, and I'm just gonna put them into my visual journal. So I'm gonna just grab my visual journal and I'll just put them in one of the pages at the back, just to keep them safe and keep them out of the way. And then they'll be ready for, we need to use them again for future weeks. Well, I hope you had fun experimenting and doing something a little bit more open-ended. Thank you so much for watching.